Hi, my name is Steve Hullfish. Today we're going to talk about Avid editing and customizing your keyboard in Avid, which is a very important thing to be able to at least understand how to do, if not to actually customize the keyboard outside of the default. Now, the default is a great place to start, and there's plenty of people that would say that you shouldn't change the default because it makes it harder if you want to step to another editor's machine and you place your hands on the keyboard and all of a sudden you have no clue what you're doing. That's actually the case for me because my keyboard has been massively customized since about 1994, and for me to go onto someone else's keyboard is very difficult at this point. So I would highly recommend if you get in that situation where you are jumping between keyboards or jumping between editing stations, that you keep your keyboard fairly close to that default Avid keyboard, because it just makes it easier to make that jump. Or if you don't have your user settings with you for some reason, then that helps too. What we need to do is look at our settings. That's the place where we go for our keyboard settings. Should look something like this, and you'll see that there's three different columns of information. This is the name of the setting in this column. This is the name of the specific setting. For example, you can see these are bin views, and then these are the types of bin views. This is a basic bin view, a capture bin view, a custom bin view, and they also have those for things like exports. Here are all the different export settings. And down here we have the keyboard setting. You can also jump to this by hitting K on your keyboard. That'll jump you right here. And if we double click on this, that opens up our keyboard setting. And this is what it looks like. The other thing that we need to be able to customize our keyboard is the command palette. The command palette can be accessed, actually not even sure which menu it is anymore. I always hit Command 3. It looked like that came up under Tools. Under Tools, you'll see down here is the command palette, so you can open it from here, or you can do Command 3 as I just did. All right, so with the command palette open and our keyboard open, you can see the default settings. If you've got a nice color-coded keyboard for Avid, these are the icons that are going to be on those settings that are going to be identical to what your keyboard shows. Up here is the command palette. There's three important buttons to know about here. The button-to-button reassignment button, the active palette button, and the menu-to-button reassignment button. We're going to start out in the button-to-button reassignment. And what this allows you to do is any buttons that are up here you can drag to your keyboard, or you can drag even to the UI. You can put these keys that are up here, you can put them here, or even in the timeline above the timeline. We're going to concentrate on customizing our keyboard. So the question becomes, do you want to stick with the standard default keyboard and maybe change a few things? That's an easy school of thought. Or do you want to make something that is truly best for you? For example, I am right-handed. Now, what does that mean? Well, if I'm operating with a mouse or a trackball, then my right hand is usually on that mouse or trackball. Now imagine sitting in front of your keyboard, you got your right hand on that mouse. Where does your left hand want to be? Does it want to be on the JKL keys? That's actually kind of uncomfortable. It cramps your body up. It almost makes much more sense for the JKL keys to be under the Z, X, and C keys. Before we get too in-depth in how to actually map the keyboard, let's take a look at some of the keys that you probably want to have mapped and are the most important to map. We don't have to do everything all today. You can map or notice just a couple of keys, determine where you want to put those, and then map other things as you experience them, as you edit, as you begin to understand some of the other buttons that you might want. You can always add those later. So I'm going to talk about the 5 most important buttons on the keyboard, which are basically the same in Final Cut which are basically the exact same buttons in Final Cut Pro, Premiere, and in Avid. Those are the JKL keys, the I and the O here. JKL, I-O, basically they let you play, they let you pause, and if you hold down K and L, they let you go in slow motion. If you hold down K and J, they let you go slow motion backwards, basically to scrub, which is very important. And so I keep my middle finger on that K key, and then as you press K and L, you'll scrub a little bit forward, and if you lift your L finger up, then you're paused. If you hold down the K and J, you scrub backwards, and if you lift up your J finger and keep K, then you're paused. So it's just a very easy way, a very intuitive way to be able to find the exact endpoint you want. And then since your fingers are on JKL anyhow, it's very easy to basically do touch typing, where you lift your finger off the J key and touch the I key for in, and then lift either your K finger, your middle finger, up and press the O key for out. The other important buttons are the ones that actually edit. And on Avid, those are defaulted down here to Z, which is your lift key, X, which is your extract key, V, which is your splice in key, and B, which is your overwrite. So these two buttons put things into the timeline. These two buttons take things out of the timeline. The way that I like to edit is to continue this touch typing method, so that what I do is I put my JKL keys down a row like this. You can literally just drag these three keys down, and then the three keys that were up here are now mapped up here. Then you can drag your I and O keys directly above them where they were before. So now those same kind of keystrokes where you hold down JKL and reach up for in and out are here. So I'm going to put the I here, the O here, the B here, and the V here. Now there's a reason why I mapped these in this way. These buttons are going to, if I place the two red buttons, lift and overwrite, in the middle, and then I place the two yellow buttons, extract and splice in, on the outside of those two. So now I can do overwrite, splice in here, lift, and extract over here, all without moving my hand too much. I can keep my fingers on JKL, reach up for I, O for marking in, and then reach up even a little bit further to be able to hit any of those editing buttons I want. There are 4 additional buttons that I think are critical to being able to edit in Avid on the keyboard. One of them is right here. This is the Mark Clip button, and I am going to put that on the M key for Mark Clip. That's a little bit of a mnemonic, but it's also very close to my JKL keys, so that I can press all these buttons without moving my hand very much. The other important one is the Remove Mark Clip, or Clear Both Marks. And what this does is this allows me to, if I have a mark in or a mark out set and I want to clear them, it allows me to clear them both very quickly. So I can't drag this onto my Shift key from my non-shifted keyboard, so I need to go find this button up in these tabs up here. I'm going to figure it's in the Edit button. There it is. There's the Clear Both Marks button. And so I'm going to hold down the Shift key, which shows me all my shifted keys, and see there's nothing on M. So I'm just going to drag the Clear Both Marks button down to my M key, and now I have Mark In to Out on this button and Clear Mark In to Out on the Shift button. Similarly, I also like to be able to clear the Mark In and Mark Out buttons fairly often. So I'm going to map the Clear Mark In button to this key and the Clear Mark Out button to this key, which are directly underneath my Mark In and Mark Out buttons. So now this is Mark In, this is Mark Out, then Shift Mark In becomes Clear Mark In, and Shift Mark Out becomes Clear Mark Out. And then the other thing is that Option Mark In and Out is Go To In and Out. So you really don't even need these Go To In and Out buttons, because Option Mark In and Out are the same thing. Another series of buttons that's very important, if you want to give it a try, is Tracks. I like to be able to enable my audio and video tracks from the keyboard instead of having to mouse over and press them in the timeline. So what I do is I map audio channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to the actual number keys 1 through 8. Then these other additional number keys and minus and equals, I put the video tracks. So now I can do 9 is V1, V2 goes next to it, V3 goes next to that, and V4 goes next to that. As soon as you've mapped these things, the keyboard is saved. If I close this, all those changes are going to be saved. You don't have to do anything to save them. If I open them up, you can see that they're exactly as I left them. One of the things that I did when I was customizing my keyboard many years ago was I printed out a blank version of the keyboard and kept it near my edit station. And any time that I reached for an icon on the screen with my mouse or pulled down a menu, for example, render into out, that's a typical menu pull down item for many people, that there's no reason for that. And I will show you how to map those menu commands right onto your keyboard, allowing you to, at the touch of a button, do what you gotta do with the mouse. So spend a little bit of time considering what those menu pull downs that you do all the time are, or what those mouse clicks are onto an icon on the screen. See if you can replace those with keystrokes. Even if you do it one at a time, just one keystroke a day, where you say, I think I'll add this keystroke. That's a great way to do it because it allows you to keep that one keystroke in your mind and kind of add it slowly and slowly and slowly. You add more and more and more keystrokes. Also, you should know that in addition to things like copy to clipboard is a really good button, but I almost never use copy to clipboard unless I use it with the option key. Well, if you don't always want to hold down the option key when you click on copy to clipboard, and what you really want to do is option copy to clipboard or alt copy to clipboard, then there are actually buttons that allow you to map the functionality of the option key or the control key or the alt key and the command key directly to that key. So if you drag this button on top of the copy to clipboard button, you see there's a little dot there now. Now this is actually option copy to clipboard, which with one press of a button not only copies something from your timeline, for example, but it also puts it into your source monitor ready to edit, all in one button. The final thing that I want to point out, which is really powerful and something that not many people know is possible, is to use the menu to button reassignment. And what this allows you to do is any button that you want, for example, I want to map something onto the F8 key, for example. So if I click on F8, you'll see that my cursor becomes this weird little icon, which is actually supposed to look like a file menu pull down. Kind of see that, the tab at the top and then a bunch of lines. Now, wherever I go up here, I can map anything from the menu to that button. So for example, you can see that Audio Mixer does not have a keyboard shortcut. So now by putting Audio Mixer there, you can see that now F8 is my Audio Mixer button. Another important thing, especially for a freelancer, is to be able to save and recall keyboard settings, or actually any settings. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Let's say, for example, that I want to share this blank keyboard with you, or I can put it on a thumb drive so that I can use it when I'm out freelancing. What I can do is go, while I'm in the settings mode, if I go up to File and choose New, Settings File, or Command New. Control New on a PC, obviously. That gets you this little window. It almost looks like nothing. Notice it says Untitled Setting. Basically, anything that I drag from over here, I could drag actually all of these keyboards. Or let's say I have maybe an export setting that I want to share with you so that when you export your stuff, it comes out the same as mine. I could drag one of my export settings in here. You can see you can populate a little list. You could obviously just select all and grab all of your settings and put them in there if you wanted to, but this is more for a kind of a customized export of just a few things. I'm going to delete this export setting here. So now all I'm going to really save are these three keyboards. I'm going to hit close, and then I'm going to choose save. I can give it a name. I'll call them Steve's Keys, and I'll hit save. Now what we'll do is we'll go to another user setting. Let's say that Joe has decided that he wants to use my keyboard settings. Well, if you look down in the keyboard settings that he's got, there's an MC English one, which doesn't look like any of mine, and there's this keyboard setting, which again also doesn't look like any of mine. but we want Joe to be able to use my keyboard settings. What do? Well, now while we're here in the settings list, we go to File and choose Open Settings File. If I want Joe to be able to use my settings, I simply choose File, Open Settings File, navigate to the location of where I saved those settings. There it is, Steve's Keys right here. You could put this on a USB drive. This could be sitting on your desktop. It could be on a network. Could be anywhere, really. And choose Open. And there are my keyboard settings. And I can just drag them right over. Let's say we'll just do the left and the right side keyboard settings. Drag them over here. Choose Add. And now we've got Steve's left side and Steve's right side. And they are in Joe's settings, just like we had them in my settings. So that's how you can copy, share, save, move settings. And I also highly suggest that each point release, even not full release like a 7, 8, or a 9, but each point release that you redo your user settings. And a lot of times you can say, oh, I never redo mine and they're fine. Well, you don't realize that some of the weirdness, that strange kind of buggy behavior that happens is not because that there's a bug in the Avid, but it's because there is a corruption in your user setting. And a lot of times if you experience weird behavior, it's because of those corruptions. So I suggest starting off with a clean user setting all the time. And one of the ways that makes that very quick and painless is if you print out this keyboard setting, because the keyboard setting is really one of the most difficult things to change out of your user settings. Thanks for joining me for this look at customizing your keyboard in Avid. I'm Steve Hullfish.